All right. Welcome to another episode of the Pepper Soup Talk Show. Thank you for joining us today. So today we are very honored to have another amazing guest here with us, and his name is Brandon, and Brandon Bailey. Brandon is a mortgage broker, and he's also a co-founder and COO of Magnum. Just correct me if I'm like pronouncing it. Magnum Opus Federal Corporations. Brandon will basically be sharing his sort of experience and wisdom with us today regarding the housing market and for those people who are interested in owning their dreams homes. And we are joined here today with my other partner, Toby, and Aki, of course, will be joining us virtually. So, Brandon, welcome to the Pepper Soup Talk Show.
Thank you. Appreciate the welcome. Everyone gets it wrong. It's Magnum Opus Federal Corporation. Yep.
Brandon, that sounds like a very sophisticated title for a corporation. Can you what's this company about?
Sure. So I'm not sure if you guys are into music at all, but Magnum Opus is Latin. It refers to like a masterpiece, an artist, or a performer's greatest piece of work. It means flawless with no mistakes. So myself and Christian, we're co-founders of the company. He's the CEO. I'm the COO. When we started the company, the phrase was financing your masterpiece. It's like, you do something with no mistakes. It comes out perfect, right? So we're a brokerage. We're a brokerage located in Philadelphia, Northern Liberties. We're blessed. We've been in business for going on 10 years. We were founded in February of 2012. Unfortunately, COVID has actually not affected us in a negative way, which is surprising in terms of business.
Great.
So business has actually been booming for the last year and a half since COVID hit. So,
actually, can you actually expand on that? Why has business been booming for you guys? And what is a broker? What is your guys' role?
Sure.
And why has business been booming? Why business has been sort of slow for other companies?
Sure. So that's four questions in one. So I'll answer the brokerage question first, right?
It will slow me down.
So when it comes to getting the mortgage, most people don't realize there's actually 4 places you can go, right? There's something called a retail seller servicer, okay? Something called a Fed charter, something called a correspondent lender, and a broker. So I'm going to give you guys examples of all 3 and kind of tell you the differences here. Retail seller servicer, I'm assuming you guys have bank accounts, right? So that's Wells Fargo, Citizens Bank, TD Bank. They're retail because any person can walk in and open up a checking account. It's open to the public, right? They do mortgages, but at the same time, it's not their core offering. Typically, if you have a checking account, they're offering you what? Credit cards, student loans. You'll check your statement. There's a certain balance in there, hit you with a balance, minimal fee, something like that. But they do mortgages, right? The second place is something called a Fed charter. Fed charter is a kind of a specialized institution. So a lot of clients I work with will have bank accounts with credit unions, right? I'll say, well, why do you bank there? Oh, my parent is a police officer or was in the Army. They have an account with a Navy Federal Credit Union, a Conestoga Bank. Those institutions, if you don't actually have a membership, they won't work with you, right? You have to be a member from work with you. In addition to that, because they're lending their own money most of the time, they have very, very, I'll say, stringent credit requirements. Like I had someone that had like a 700 FICO, very low debt ratio. The credit union said, hey, you know what? I'm not working with you. If you're lending your own money, you're going to make sure the person you're working with is very, very qualified, right? And the last 2 places I actually had the experience of working at. When I first got into business, I worked for a company out of Jersey called eMortgage Management. They were a correspondent. And what happens is these institutions are, they're lending their money, but then they're selling the servicing rights, right? If that makes any sense. And then the last place where we work now, the brokerage, what that means is technically we are taking the borrower, right? Someone comes to us and says, hey, Brian, I want to purchase a home. We look at their credit characteristics, okay, their income, their assets, and we pick the best product for them. So I give you an example. Let's say you're a first-time home buyer and you don't have much money, right? Which if you graduated college, tuition at Temple was what, 60 grand a year, something crazy. So you don't have much saved. But at the same time, there are first-time homebuyer programs out there. So you may say, hey, you know what? The program that gives you your entire down payment, 100% financing, this makes sense for you, right? Whereas if you're someone who maybe you're a step-up buyer where you're married now, maybe in your mid-30s, you and your wife or wife-to-be are buying your first place, you may say I have 5% to put down. There's a very, very specific product, right? In this environment, I know that a lot of people are business owners nowadays. A lot of times business owners, they don't like to pay taxes. But what happens is, again, a couple years ago, there was no product for those individuals. Now, if you're, let's say you're a business owner, but maybe you didn't claim a lot of money in your taxes, there's alternative financing. So as a broker, we really have, I would say, a myriad number of products where we can kind of match it to what makes the most sense, right? So that's one big difference. The other difference is this too. As a mortgage broker, any person you talk to my company has to be licensed, right? So to be an actual broker, it requires something called a SAFE Act license, which means that the level of expertise you're getting in speaking to an individual at my company is going to be a lot higher than that at a Wells or TD, because there's something called a registered rep. They're not actually licensed. There's an exam you take, a certain credit requirement to actually become a broker. So that answers your question. Second part, you said, why is business booming for us? It's a couple reasons. Number one, if anyone watches the news, the Fed has lowered rates tremendously, right? So right now you can get, 2.5% on a 30-year fixed, right? Which is low. When I first got into business, rates were in the 5 and 6s.
Wow.
We thought that was low. You talk to our parents, rates were 14%. This is back in, the early 90s. So because rates are so low, that's encouraging people to borrow. Number one. Number two, we're very, very big on tech, right? So it's scary because when I first got into the business, every person that I did a mortgage for, they came in, we sat down, I did their application by hand. I had a pen and paper, I did their application by hand, filled it in, I went back, scanned documents in, they came in and signed. Now, somewhere between I got into business back in 2009, 2013, 14, 15, the mortgage business itself started to migrate and say, hey, you know what? This needs to become paperless, right? So we're a company that's very, very big on tech. When I say big on tech, I mean everything is automated, right? Realtor partners say, hey, Brandon, you in the mortgage business? I say, not really, I'm in the automation business, right? I'm joking, but we try to make things easy. So our entire platform, when it comes to getting a mortgage, a person can literally get pre-approved and do the entire process from the palm of their hand with a cell phone. We have a proprietary software that we use, and we actually built it out with a web developer that allows us to not only help the borrower through the process, but they can complete the entire application on their cell phone and upload documents virtually as well. So because of we invest in technology, that actually helped us propel forward. Where a lot of businesses that weren't ready to make that transition, they were hurt by not being able to come in office, right? And I think that brings up another good point, because what will happen is, this new normal, right, where you're kind of walking around with masks on, there's going to be some businesses that never go back to work, right? So I think it's going to change everything, because there's a lot of jobs that don't require to be in office. So I think that's going to make people in this next purchase, in the next, I say 12 months, 18 months down the line, they're really going to take a look at, okay, well, this house I'm buying, am I comfortable here? Is my man cave here? Is, the fireplace here? Because if you're working remotely, you want to make sure you're very, very comfortable at home. I think for the last, 20 years, we've been in an environment where, people are used to working at 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5 in the office, right? And now we're in an environment where it's at home, right? So there's really no separation between work life and personal life. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really dope. It just sounds like you guys were sort of ahead of the game before the pandemics. So you sort of set yourself up for success, which is great. So we want to just jump into the next question, which is, what are some sort of misconceptions that people have about home buying or mortgages?
Sure. Wow, it's fine. I do seminars about people buying homes, and a lot of times people are just, our people, right? People of color tend to be afraid of the process. Yep. They're afraid of people knowing about the information, right? And I think some misconceptions of this: one, people think you need, 20%, 10% to buy a home. You don't. Okay. FHA financing allows someone to purchase with 3.5% down. Conventional financing, you could purchase with 3% down. We have 100% financing programs available right now. So technically, if you have your closing costs, you don't need money now. That's possible now, right? Other misconceptions are people tend to think that, like, I'll give you an example. Love this channel, but at the same time, it makes our job harder, right? The channel is called HGTV, right? A lot of times people watch that show and they think, okay, well, you know what? I can find a house I want to purchase and I can fix it up, or I can do what they're doing on TV. And the process just doesn't work like that, right? A lot of times if you're trying to buy a house that's dilapidated or old, a couple things will happen. One, buying someone's headache. And then two, most people aren't general contractors, right? They don't really have that experience. So I think it's wise to actually buy something that is ready to go, right? Other major mistake that people make is this. They'll say, hey, you know what? Let's say you were trying to buy a house in, let's say December, right? December. And I have people that say, hey, you know what? I'm buying in December. I'm going to talk to you in November when I'm ready, right? Meanwhile, we're in June, mid-June, right? That's a huge mistake, because what will happen is, let's say I pull your credit, look at your income, right? Look at your debt ratios, all that stuff, to see how much you can qualify. And let's say there's a blemish on there and I see it now. We can fix it now, right? Hey, John, you need to do X, Y, Z to get your score to this level, or you need this amount of money to save. We can really plan around it. And I think a lot of people don't look at home buying as a planned decision. It's an impulse decision. And so I have clients that'll say, all right, you know what? I'm going to call you in November. They call me in November. Lease is up in December. I pull credit, and there's something, whether it's work history related or something that we can't fix because we're too close to the deadline. You see what I mean? So the misconception is people want to wait to have their credit pulled, and they're afraid to, where they shouldn't be, right? The back in 2001, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the mortgage business was really the wild, wild west. It was a lawless land, I'll say. And what had happened is you had an organization. They're called the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. They were put in place to protect consumers, right, from themselves, right, from making bad decisions. And with them in place, the process really is so transparent. You know everything as a consumer. From the time you start the application process, which is talking to myself and filling out our web app online, to sending your documents in, the idea is to develop a comfort zone, right, where you want to be. Like if you're paying, let's say you're paying $1,500 in rent, right? Well, your mortgage payment shouldn't be $2,000, right? It should be somewhere in that ballpark. Right. You know what I mean? And the conversation we have with first-time home buyers or someone buying a third home is one of, hey, look, let's establish this comfort zone so you're ready to go and you feel good about the decision. You know what I mean? So.
Sure. And just taking a couple steps back, I'm not sure if we really clarified, how did you get into starting your own business?
Sure.
What was that process?
Right, okay. That can be a 2-hour conversation. That could be a 10-minute conversation. So funny enough, when I got into the business, when I graduated Bucknell, I actually worked for an investment bank called SCI Investments out of college, and I was like a sales executive doing really, really well. And what's interesting is my business partner and best friend, Christian, I know he's watching right now. What's up? I known him since I was about 12 or 13 years old, right? So we were in this program. It was called FAME. It stood for Farm Advanced Minority Education. So if you were Black, Hispanic, Asian, and you excelled in math and science, they put you in a environment where you're around other smart kids. Back in 1996, to be a nerd wasn't cool, right? You got laughed at, whatever. So I was the kid that was had braids, the bandana, going in honors and AP classes. Right? But anyway, so he was in the program too. Christian was in the program too. So when I had graduated school, we reconnected, right? I was working at SCI. He was working at eMortgage Management as a branch manager at a branch in Delaware. And we kind of ran into each other out in the nightlife, just hanging out. And I inquired about what he was doing. He was doing very, very well. He was always suited and booted, with the ascot on, super dressed, super. I'm like, what are you into? I do mortgages. You should check it out. And I had an opportunity to come to his branch and actually get involved in the business. And it's funny because we're in a room, this huge room, right? When we started, we were in a room. It was probably, I'm not sure I take a C, maybe 8 by 8 foot space. One phone, a laptop like this, and he would call 3 leads. I would call 1 lead, right? And I was super nervous, right? I'd be like, well, what do I say on the phone? He said, well, if you had a mortgage, what would you want to hear? I was like, well, maybe you could lower my payment. Let's try it. I was like, that's it? He's like, yeah. So, long story short, He calls 4 leads. I call 1 lead. And after being trained properly by him, within 3 months, I was a top producing loan officer at the branch. Now, it's funny because we were at that branch, his branch, for about 3 years. And at the time, the market was very, very refinance heavy, right? So people you figure we're coming out of a credit crisis where rates were 6-7%, and everyone was trying to get out of these predatory mortgages that happened. And, we had a vision where, the purchase business is the future. That's where it's at. Rates could be 6-7%. People will always want to purchase homes, no matter what. Maybe you're not buying the $400,000 house. Maybe it's $250,000, but you still need a home, right? So we had the opportunity to step on our own, and we started Magnum Opus. And that was in February of 2012. We closed our first deal May that year. I actually remember the client's name, and we never looked back. So, we have an office space downtown. It's about 3,000 square feet. We have 12 employees, right? Commercial lease. We're involved in development now, so it just kind of, started snowballing. But it took time. It's something that wasn't like, overnight, but at the same time, you make a decision like that, you gotta stick with it, right? So, yeah.
What was some of the hardest struggle in that process,
Okay.
Because,
Yeah.
The end result always looks glamorous, but,
Right.
it's what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. To build on
Yeah.
what Toby said, you say that when you was thinking about starting your own business, you were a little nervous, which is okay. Like, what were you nervous about before you started this process?
Sure. So
Just want you to be a little vulnerable.
Sure.
Here.
a lot of late night shooting in the gym. Well, you know what? So, and this is one reason I wanted to come on the show, because a lot of businesses that are black owned or minority owned are very underfunded, right? And at the time, we had nothing. We started it from scratch with whatever we had. In doing that and investing our time and efforts, I think that was the scariest thing. Not having an umbrella behind us. And it's funny because when recruiting, people say, "Oh, you know what? You're not a Wells Fargo, or you're not a TD Bank, or you're not a Trident," right? But at the same time, Wells Fargo's been around since, I think 1846. But at one point, Wells Fargo was Wells Fargo. It didn't mean anything, right? And so when I look at Magnum Opus and our company, I feel like whenever you're in a service or sales type of role, people are working with you. They're buying into you. So the company name doesn't mean anything. You give it meaning, right? And so I think one of the biggest fears that I had was like, we have this company, and we're building it from scratch, literally. What's going to make people want to trust us and work with us, right? And the answer is that people, they trust and believe in you, right? If they see that you work hard and that you want to get back to them about a question you have, they see that. They see that you return their call at 9:30 at night, but the retail bank is closed at 4:30. They see that. They see that you really take your time and hold them through the process of making sure they're comfortable with getting their credit pulled, establishing a payment. They see that. So to us now Magnum Opus is known throughout the city, but before it wasn't, and that was a big fear because it's like, in getting business, having a name that means something is huge. At least at the time I thought it was, right? So yeah.
Yeah, we actually have a shout out to Khadijah, who actually giving you a shout out, Brandon. So Mr. Live on Purpose. What does she mean by that? And Khadijah, thank you for tuning in. For all of us, for those who are joining us today, we're very grateful to have Brandon with us. He's one of the game changer in owning your dream home. So if you really have a question in mind that you want him to answer, please just add it in the comment section during the live, and we make sure Brandon is able to actually respond to your questions. So what does Khadijah mean by Mr. Live on Purpose?
Mr. Live on Purpose.
Yeah.
Miss Live.
Miss Live.
Live.
Miss Live on Purpose. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm messing up.
I'll have
Miss
to
Live
ask
on
her.
Purpose. But thank you for your comments.
I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
Because I literally just sent her the DM about the link,
Right.
literally 3 minutes ago.
Right.
So maybe she's talking about that.
Okay.
So,
Great.
yeah,
Great.
Yeah. So that's one of my child friends. That's his wife. I know Khadijah.
Okay.
Actually, Khadijah was in Fame too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Every person that was in that program went to college.
Okay. Wonderful.
So yeah.
Wonderful.
So yeah. But
So
it's funny.
we do our best to engage our listeners as much as possible. So thank you for tuning in. Go ahead, Toby. You want to ask the next question?
Yeah, so one of the things you said early on, you saw a vision to incorporate technology into your company. And with that decision being said, what are some of the signals that make you think like, oh, we should incorporate this and that and the third in order to be cutting edge with everybody else in the industry?
So it's funny because a lot of people own businesses. A lot of people don't work with their best friend, right? Chris is my best friend, right? Literally. So we always have these conversations about things. And he's someone that's very, very, I would say, a strategic thinker. He's always thinking next level. I am too, but he's super, super into tech, like to the point where it's like, you know, like movie type, right? And so when it comes to doing something, you want to make it as easy and as seamless as possible, right? That's always been the goal, right? So the mortgage process, people think about it as a headache. It's stressful, it's scary, there's money involved, it's this major decision. So everything we do at our company, we try to say, okay, well, is there an easier way to do this? And I give you an example, something as small as we're in an age where we're constantly logging into Facebook, Instagram, your bank accounts. Everyone probably has at least 35 passwords, right? I'm going to give you guys a gem right now. I'm sharing this with whoever's watching. So there's a software called Dashlane, where literally once you download the software, it imports all your passwords securely, right? You never have to remember a password again, right? That sounds like something small, but on the mortgage side of things, there's something called a mortgage processor that processes the paperwork. That's why I was asking those questions about the paperwork, right? You know, they're logging into 15 to 20 systems a day. If you spend 3 minutes looking up a password, that's an hour and a half that you lost out of your day. So by having a password manager, that little efficiency is saving you so much time. So when people, whatever business it is, you know, it's always great to have those efficiencies. And so we always try to think of, okay, what can we do better? What's the next best thing? And with our loan software platform, it's literally that easy to interact with the customer to get the mortgage. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I wanna go back to this what you said about, like, you know, black people and brown people sort of being a little bit nervous, intimidated when it comes to buying homes. And we talked about this misconception, right? And you really did a great job in explaining the process. So what do you think that we need to do to just like move from this idea of like getting as many of our like people to be home buyers or homeowners?
Sure. So I'm a big proponent of education. I think that when people have the information and knowledge, they're more willing to take the next step, right? This world is about systems, right? There's a system, everything. When it comes to getting your credit pulled, there's a credit system. Comes to getting your driver's license, you have to go through PennDOT to get that. So I think the more comfortable our people feel with the system, the more likely they will make the next step. I'll say this too, and this is one thing that also got me into the business. When you go to a Wells or a TD, a lot of times you see people that don't look like you, right? And I think when people see, okay, well, you know what, the person I'm talking to on the phone speaks like me, looks like me, they are me, or I was them, they feel more comfortable. Like one of my favorite pictures, it's of Obama, right? When a little kid is bending over and touching his hair. It's like, oh, wow, okay, you know, someone African-American can be president. I'm joking, but at the same time, when you see someone that looks like you, that's doing something that is financial related, there tends to be a trust there once you can break down those barriers. But I think it starts with education. As a matter of fact, one of our initiatives, which I'll talk more about if I'm ever on again or on our website, is something called, it's going to be called the Go Foundation. And that's going to be centered around, one of the pillars will be centered around education for the youth in our community. That's super, super important. Because again, before I got into the mortgage business, I didn't know the process. I had a finance background, but at the same time, you know, investment finance or investment banking and the mortgage process are very, very different worlds apart, right? And you don't know till someone tells you, right? So, but I think the education will create that level of comfort that our people need to take that next step. And I mean, people are, but at the same time, it can happen more rapidly. If that makes sense.
Right.
So,
this really touch on exactly what we're talking about. Stephanie Johnson just asked the questions. What is the biggest challenge you find as a minority business owner in the mortgage industry?
The biggest challenge. Wow, that's a loaded question. There's a lot of challenges, right? Again, I'll come back to the fact that a lot of minority businesses are underfunded. And it's interesting because there are actually a lot of grants out there for minority-owned businesses. There's an organization called the Minority Business Development Association, where you can apply for grants to actually get your business off the ground. We apply for a grant to help us do something in the community. There's a board of directors that actually sit and talk about your project. There's one gentleman there, a Nigerian gentleman. He had a magazine, and he helped him purchase a headquarter building for his magazine. They gave him the entire down payment and closing costs, right? Our particular project was for our rebranding, right? So we're going to be rebranding Magnum Opus. People see it already. It's going to be called Go Magnum Loans. That's going to be the new name that we go by, Go Magnum Loans. And they're helping us with the rebranding. So I think the biggest challenge is a lot of minority businesses are underfunded, and there's money out there to help with those sort of things that they don't know about, right? But it's all about, investigating, taking a next step, right?
Right,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that's why we're so happy to have you on the show here, because we want our guest audience to continue to tune in how they could get access to these grants and how they could sort of like take the right step in owning homes. Toby, you want to go ahead and ask Brandon our next question?
So I guess the next thing, what do you think about the current housing market? With inventory being so low, multiple offers going on homes, and the price of lumber increasing, is it still a good time to buy?
So there's kind of two ways to answer that question, right? So one way is like, well, what's the prediction? What's gonna happen next year? I think that we're gonna be in a tight market for at least the next, I'd say, 12 to 18 months. And the reason why is this: once people kind of come back to work, if you can call it that or what have you, that house they get, they're going to want to make sure it's the house they really, really, really want, because they're spending more time there, right? People are going remote. People are not coming back to work. So I think you're going to see that housing bubble kind of grow even more, right? Now, the other key piece is this, right? So if you're not buying, you're paying rent, okay? In my seminars, I don't have numbers in front of me, but you can do the math. Right now, on a house that's $200,000, a person can get a payment of somewhere around less than $1,200 a month in Philadelphia on a $200,000 house. That's going to give you probably 3 bedrooms, a garage, kitchen, living room, dining room, right? I'm going to say anywhere from 1,300 to about 1,500 square feet, right? A decent 3-bedroom apartment, I don't care where you are, is going to be, what, 1,700? Yeah. If you're in a nice area, maybe 1,500. So I think it's always a great time to buy for that very fact. Now, what you will find yourself in, and this is basic supply and demand, when supply is low, demand is high, prices go up, you'll find yourself in a bidding war, like you said. And that's kind of something you have to deal with. Now, there's a way you can work with a licensed agent to make your offer very, very strong. And the agents we work with, we kind of, coach them up, and they're very experienced, and they help clients say, hey, look, here's our strategy to get in this house. But to answer your question, I think it's still a good time to buy. Yeah. And I think you're going to continue to see the market get a little bit tighter before we see any type of light at the end of the tunnel. So.
All right. So again, keep those questions coming. We definitely want to make this as engaging as possible. So again, Brandon has a lot of experience when it comes to buying your first home. And so if you have any questions, please keep asking, so we can make sure we get as many answers as possible today. So you touched on this a little bit, Brandon. This idea of renting and buying your own home. And sometimes this could be a little bit of biased questions given your business, but just keep it real with us about what's the best sort of what would you prefer people to do, renting or buying? When it's appropriate for you to actually rent, or when it's appropriate for you to buy?
Okay. So I should have put my textbook with me here, man. These questions, I can't run numbers off the top of my head like that anymore. But anyway, so, you know, renting is not a horrible thing. Okay, if you can't buy, renting is not a horrible thing. However, with the way the mortgage process is now, okay, and the fact that you can get 100% financing, right? If a person has a year of work history, actually you can have an offer letter out of college and no experience and still buy, right? Some closing cost money. I think it makes sense to buy here and now. Here's the reason why. So, if you look at real estate, okay, this is since Great Depression, 1929. Even if you look at the bubbles that burst, 80s, 90s, the credit market, it's nothing but appreciate at about 3 to 4% a year, no matter what. It's the safest investment. Now that's across the country. Philly itself right now is hot, right? Yeah. Philly is very, very hot, right? So the fact of the matter is, at the end of the year, when you go see your tax professional, let's say you're paying, I don't know, let's say $1,500 a month in rent, which is a fair, nice 2-bedroom, right? What's that, 18 grand? That's $18,000 a person spent in 1 year renting, okay? If you buy, let's say, a $250,000 house, your payments, let's say it's the same. Let's say it's $1,500, right? Well, this is me doing just quick math in my head. You probably pay roughly $10,000 in interest, okay? So let's say someone making 70 grand a year did that. Uncle Sam can only tax them on roughly $60,000 a year. The reason why is because interest is one of the only things that's taxed dollar for dollar. So you actually put more money back in your pocket by owning versus renting. Right. That's just one benefit. Now, another benefit is this. Every year if you rent, normally your landlord says what? Hey, cost of inflation, we're going to raise your rent $90 or 1%, whatever it is, 2%, right? Well, if you're in a 30-year fixed mortgage, your mortgage doesn't change. Now, your taxes and insurance may change, but your actual payment doesn't change, right? So again, I mean, buying a house is always a better option than renting. If you can now, it's not to say someone should just jump out the window and buy right now, but it should be a decision that's planned. And with our skilled team at the company, we have this conversation all day. Hey, if you buy this house, here's your payment. Out of pocket, here's what to expect. The process in this environment, we're talking about 30 days, right? I feel like Philly is one of those last affordable cities where you can still buy a home in a decent area and not pay an arm and a leg, right. But it won't be for long. And it's funny because this area right now, this is Eastern Los, right? This area is North Philadelphia. My family's from here. My dad's from North Philadelphia. My grandma lives on Pacific Street, not far from here. And this area is historically minority owned, and that's changing very, very quickly. And a lot of the city that's happening to where, people are buying it up, and it's not us. So I think that needs to change. Yeah. I'll give you an example. So I'm co-owner and founder of Magnum Opus Federal Corp. Christian also have a development company. It's called Go Magnum Development. And, we specifically have decided to look in underprivileged areas. So we own 5 multifamilies along the Temple North Philadelphia corridor, which if you look at Temple right now, right, this is kind of some education about geography. Temple wants everything from university to the hospital, right? So if you kind of start at Temple and go north up Broad Street, you see, buildings here, dorms here, being strategically placed until they buy up everything, right? So what I've done, I say, you know what? That's obvious. If you go down Allegheny, right by Broad, there's nothing but construction 24/7. So we have it's a $1.7 million project that's happening right there across 4 quads located on the block that we're rehabbing right now, and that'll be used for housing for underserved, right? So
that's really dope.
Yep.
Brandon, we appreciate you. Go ahead, Toby.
No, I was just saying, that's very important. A lot of people think it's kind of more difficult to buy a house than what it is,
Okay.
and don't really see the benefits like you just listed out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons is a lot of people are uneducated of the process, or they make mistakes doing it on their own. Like, what's some of like the top 3 mistakes people do when trying to purchase a home?
Okay, there's actually a marketing piece that we created. It's called the top 5 do's and don'ts. I don't have it committed to memory, but I'm gonna try my best. All right.
Right.
One thing that people do is, while trying to buy a house, they will open up additional credit. Right. If you're in the process of buying a house and you're qualifying for a mortgage, you probably shouldn't go out and, buy the 70-inch TV at Best Buy and finance it at the 0% APR. Shouldn't do that, right? Shouldn't do that. Another big problem, which it's funny because it doesn't seem like it'd be an issue, but it is. Someone tells their parents, "Oh, I'm going to buy a house." Okay, great. Here is $10,000 cash. They deposit $10,000 cash into their account. That cash can't be sourced. The money can't be used. Right. That sounds silly, but you'd be surprised how many our people have just, mattress money somewhere in the house or in the bank, but it's cash. Now, if that's the case, and you're working with a member of our team, I guess the way I like to describe ourselves, we're your advocate, right? We're like your attorney. We're helping you get the house. So you want to tell us everything. If you were on trial for something that you didn't do, you want to make sure your attorney knows the good and the bad. That's what we are, right? So if something like that happens, there's a way to make sure the money can be seasoned and sourced properly. But at the same time, you'd be surprised how many times I see that.
Can you define what is source?
Oh, there you go. So depending on the program you're using, FHA or conventional require you to have the money seasoned for 60 days or from an acceptable source. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're making, let's say $60,000 a year, something, right? Well, that means your paycheck is what? Right around, after taxes, right around $4,000 a month, right? Well, that money coming in is your paycheck. That's okay to use because it's from your paycheck. But if $10,000 comes in, okay, and it's coming from a source where it says cash, it can't be used. Now, if mom had $10,000 in her account, mom writes you a check, okay, and it's a gift, and we say, okay, well, the money left mom's account, okay, you deposit the check, it clears your account, it's seasoned now, right? Because it came from an acceptable source, right? Now, whenever someone purchases a house, we need 60 days of bank statements. Okay, so we would need, like, and someone buying right now will have to give me all of April, all of May, and June through year to date. But season means that it has to be looked at or available for a certain period of time. Normally it's 60 days. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you for responding to all these questions, Brandon.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Let us know if you need a little bit of break so we.
No, man, fire away, man. This is good.
Yeah,
It keeps me sharp.
And we appreciate you for sharing
Yeah.
all these knowledge with us about buying and owning a home, especially coming from one of our own. So, Brandon, we have also like a comment here, a question actually here from Sean Jackson. What's the most difficult process in getting licensed?
So, in getting licensed, now I'm probably the best person to answer this question. Here's why. I got licensed many moons ago, so the process is very different. I say the most difficult part is probably passing the exam. A lot of the exam has to do with ethics, right? And with ethics, they put you in a lot of situational questions, right? And so not to get too much into the mortgage world, but there's a Reg Z, there's a Reg B, there's a Reg A, okay? There's regs for days, okay? Each of these regulations under the, it's called the Mortgage Act, means something different, depending on the time period that it was passed. So on the exam, they may ask you a question at a specific time period, which during that time period, that reg meant something different, right? So that stuff with ethics and the rules, that's probably the most difficult part of the exam. There's a mortgage product part of the exam. I'm not gonna say it's easy, But that is intuitive, sort of, once you know the business. But the ethics part, and the part they put you in situational questions about the laws, becomes very, very, very difficult. Back in 2002, 3, 4, 5, there actually was no mortgage exam. Anybody can be licensed. They've taken the approach to making the mortgage process that of a financial planner, or almost like a CPA or an accountant, where there are professionals working in the business, and that's why they made it so much more difficult to get into it, which I think is the right thing to do. Yeah. So yeah.
Again, Brandon is a co-founder of he's a mortgage broker, so he helped people find the best product, right, in order to purchase a home. So again, Brandon, if people want to be able to find you or get more information about
Absolutely.
buying a home, where would you like to direct them?
So there's a couple things. So our website is www.gomagnumloans.com. Okay. Or my IG is Sir Arison 303. Again, on the website, there's a number listed there. I'm a big phone person. I'm the kind of person where if I could do something automated online, I'd rather call first. Most people, when it comes to their finances, are like that, and I encourage that. That way, it's a conversation and not just you put your information in. So that 800 number actually dials directly to one of our licensed professionals, and you can ask for Brandon, you'll get myself, and we can start the process that way. Kind of just, and I guess I didn't do this, but laying out the process. Normally, it's one conversation first, where we kind of just go over the broad strokes, tell them the timeline, what to expect. The person can go on a secure web portal that we invite them to, a client portal, and put the information in. It's very, very secure. It requires two-factor authentication. You guys know what that is? Right. Very, very secure.
I'm going to pretend I don't.
Okay, yeah.
But go ahead, elaborate.
Right, so two-factor authentication means when you log into the portal, it'll actually send you either a text to your cell phone or a separate email to verify that you're the real user for security purposes, right? That way, you're not, information isn't being stolen. The person logs in, they do a very, very short questionnaire. The questionnaire takes, I would say, 5 to 7 minutes. From that questionnaire, we're able to extract 1, credit, 2, income. We have all the necessary details about their personal situation to see what program makes the most sense. From there, the system will prompt them to upload very, very specific documents, right? Typically, if it's a W-2 wage earner, someone working a normal job, it's W-2s for the last 2 years, pay stubs. So if you're paid, let's say bi-weekly, that'd be 2 pay stubs. If you're paid weekly, that'd be 4 pay stubs, right? As well as 2 months bank statements and an ID, right? Once you have that information, one of my assistants actually will call you and actually book an appointment with you to speak to myself or my business partner, Christian, and we'll literally walk you through the process verbally. That second call is very important because on that call, we are establishing a comfort zone, right? Where do you want to spend? Where are you looking to buy? What's your out-of-pocket? What do you want your payment to be, right? If you walk into Best Buy, you see the TV that's 70 inches, and you look right underneath, it's $700, right? When people go and see a house, they say, okay, this house costs $250,000, but they don't translate, okay, what are closing costs, what's a payment? It's not natural. So our job is to make sure people understand exactly what that is. Right.
So, Brent, we talked a lot about process. You talked a lot about systems in buying a home. And sometimes it's just like, for someone who, like I said, it's like most of us, instead of being proactive, we're sort of reactive. We like, I find the love of my life. She's great. She wants a home. She wants a dream home. And as a man, you're like, man, I need to step my game up. So that's like reactive, right?
Okay.
But realistically, like, talk to us about like how long this process take for you to go from like just thinking about buying a home to actually getting your own, that dream home that you want. How long does that take, and what advice will you have for the first home buyers?
Got it. All right. So, if a person has a 640 FICO, okay, now can you get a mortgage with a lower score? It's possible, but at the same time, the person won't have a great experience if you have less than a 640, typically. There are some outliers, right? You have a 640 FICO. You have a money in the bank to cover closing costs because we have 100% financing programs. If a person called me today, we have them pre-approved by Monday or Tuesday, they could be out looking for a home and be closing by mid-end of July. So if a person's financials are together, the process can literally happen that quick, right? And it's funny because some clients, they're like, whoa, wait a second. You know, I was inquiring, I can buy right now. I'm like, yeah. Oh, I know it's that easy. That's literally the conversation I have with some clients. Now, if a person's information isn't together, or they're not working, there's some checker history there. Obviously, that person can't buy as quickly. But literally, someone that's ready to go and has been responsible financially, they can pretty much buy right away. Now, you said something very, very important. You said dream home. Okay. Now, normally your first home isn't your dream home. That's normally the second house. So a lot of our clients, we pride ourselves on working with past clients, right? So a lot of our clients are referrals or they are repeat clients. So normally, I say that second time the person comes back to us and they're buying that second home, at that point, it's probably their dream home because they're making more money, they're a little bit older. If they're engaged or they're getting married, now we have two incomes versus one, and they can afford more purchasing power, right? So.
And just another question: what are
Sure.
the hottest areas to buy in Philly right now?
Wow. So, prime example, our office is located in Northern Liberties. That's literally north of Old City and goes from Front and Market up until about out to the Girard up to 13th. There is very hot. But at the same time, you can't get a house over there for less than $700,000, right? Other areas of Mount Airy, very, very hot. Point Breeze, very, very hot. It's funny because the first deal we did at the company was a property in Mount Airy. This is back in 2012. Row house, maybe 1,500 square feet, 156,000 in 2012. That same house or house in those blocks are going for close to $300,000 now, right? So literally, you're talking in 8 years' time, the value of the property doubled.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. It all depends. So I mean, I think the day-old argument too in Philadelphia is, if you have kids, you want the good school district or good school, right? So not saying Philadelphia schools aren't good, but at the same time, a lot of people want to be in the suburbs. You're talking Delaware County, you're talking Cheltenham, right? In those areas too. So there's a lot of areas that are hot and great place to buy, depending on what you're looking for, right? I know this area or like Fishtown, for example, has a great walkability score. Walkability means there's a lot of restaurants, a lot of things to do, a lot of culture that's around the area. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're someone who is fresh out of college, you're more into like the nightlife scene. That's a very different conversation. If you're someone who's maybe 10 years out of college, looking at starting a family. So yeah. Yeah. And then I'll say this too. On that first and second call, that's something that I discussed with the client, the home buyer. Hey, where you looking at? What are you trying to accomplish? And we actually can match them if they don't have a realtor with a realtor that actually knows the area very, very well. So.
And then just building on top of one of the previous conversations or mentions that you made, your company's really built buying up in North Philly area, just because of what it is historically. If some of, I guess, people are not as aware of the mortgage industry, how can they partake in, besides buying their own house, be like a real estate investor?
Sure.
I'm not sure if you have any experience in that process, or how can people collaborate?
Absolutely. So it's funny because getting involved in real estate development was always something I wanted to do. I just didn't know how exactly it'll happen, right? And I feel like becoming an investor, it can happen in different ways, right? Sometimes it could be where, okay, well, you know what? I worked my job, I accumulated, $90,000 my 401k. It's sitting there. I want to buy a property. That's the way to invest. Another way is, okay, well, maybe you're part of an investment group where you attend, different functions. You guys talk about properties, and you start an LLC, right? So there's a lot of forums, and I can actually, if people email me, there's a lot of forums where people can get involved to talk about different ways to invest, as well as the right way to do it. There's a lot of people on Instagram who talk about, investing, and I feel like the way that they're articulating the way it should be done is not correct, because investing isn't for everybody. One, and then two, a lot of times people aren't actually ready, right? Because there's someone who is ready and someone who is not ready, right? If someone says, hey, I want to be an investor, and I say, well, do you own a house yet? They say, no, not ready to invest. The first house you should own should be your own. Now, my opinion is a little biased because my first property I purchased a duplex, right? First property I purchased is on Kelowna Street, your Temple campus. I bought a duplex it was $440,000. Put 5% down. It's a 4-bedroom. I'm sorry. It's 2 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2 4-bedroom, 2-bath units. It's bringing in about $5,000 a month, give or take. Right now, why is that important for me to do? The mortgage payment on that property was only about $2,000. Right. New construction. Philadelphia has something called a tax abatement, meaning your taxes are very, very low. Normally on a $400,000 property, your taxes are about $4,000 or $5,000. My taxes are around $1,000. So literally, the people living there are paying my mortgage for me, right? So now I'm living for free. That money I would normally pay to live, I could put it in the bank, save it, put it in another property, right? So typically when people come to me and say, hey, I want to invest, what should I do? The first question I ask, do you own a property yet? No, okay, buy a duplex or buy a multifamily. That's typically the best investment, the best first purchase a person can make is that, right? So.
That's Brandon said. If you hate paying taxes, buy a home. All right. And if you like paying taxes, like people like me, keep renting. But I think I'm about to switch on the other side soon after this show. Again, Brandon, thank you. If you have questions again for Brandon, who's just like the game changer here in Philadelphia, that the city is going through so much changes, and this is just you want to be part of this sort of change right now because, like Brandon, you mentioned going from 5 years to 10 years to see how this city has transformed, like block by block. You go from one block, you're like, wow, where's this building coming from? They're just popping up. So talk to us about, from a personal, for someone who sort of like grew up in the city, who knows the city, like, how do you feel about the change that's going on in this city on a personal level, and to see the changes in the neighborhood, because sometimes the neighborhood you grew up in and you walk around and you see like it's changed so much. Like, how do you feel about that?
Wow, that's a loaded question too. So, I think there's kind of two sides of the coin, right? One side is, hey, it's great that parts of the city are being revitalized, right? They're being refurbished. But when you look at areas being gentrified and people being forced out, it's not okay. This is a true story. So I was actually in our building. This happened about 2 weeks ago. And a lot of times you hear about things, but it doesn't become real to you until it's on your front doorstep, right? So talking to the maintenance guy, he's a brother. He probably was in the 60s. Like he was 40 though, aged really, really well. But anyway, he was complaining because, he was there fixing our AC. It's been hot the last few weeks. He's fixing our AC. He fixed it. But the comment he made was that he's in South Philly, 19147 area. He's been there for 30 years, right? They are building these huge houses. You're talking that are $700,000, right? And their taxes might be like $500-600 a year, $700 a year, if that. His taxes, though, on his property, not worth as much, close to $3,000 a year. Right. So what happens, right? So now you have someone who historically, I'll call them indigenous to the area, right? Taxes have gone up. Why? Because they built these properties that have affected the area, which have increased the values. So for him, let's say he retires, he's on the fixed income, right? Maybe Social Security or his pension. And his taxes continue to go up. Meanwhile, over here, your taxes are low for 10 years. But you can afford to pay higher taxes because if you can afford to buy a $700,000 house, you can afford higher taxes. They can't. So what happens to him? He's forced to leave the area. So that aspect of it, I definitely have a problem with. And that's hence why we're developing in areas that are underserved. That certainly help for what I call equal housing. That's a big issue, So, yeah. And it's funny because even you talk about Northern Liberties in the 90s.
Yep.
I talked to my dad. He's like, hey, you know what? It's crazy to see people walk down the street because back in the day, you just didn't do that, right? They were giving lots away. Now a lot of Northern Liberties cost you probably $200,000.
Yep.
Easy. Nothing on it. So, to answer your question.
And just based off of that, you have some years as a business owner through the ups and downs. Within the next 5 years, what's some of the biggest visions or accomplishments you're looking for Magnus Opus? Did I say that correctly?
Magnum Opus.
Magnum
Well,
Opus.
it'll be, that's another reason it's going to be Go Magnum Loans. It's a lot easier to say, right?
Yeah.
It rolls off the tongue better. Go Magnum Loans. So 5 years. I'm going to be retired. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm only 37. So, this is happening right now. Christian, my business partner, he was literally down in Atlanta earlier this week. We'll be setting up a location down there. So it'll be Magnum Opus or Go Magnum Loans in Atlanta. We're licensed in Georgia. So that'll be part of a huge expansion. Down there, it's funny because a lot of people of color are doing it big.
Yep.
And I feel like it's great to surround ourselves with
Yep.
that. So I would say
Market.
definitely in the next 5 years on that radar. On the mortgage front side, we're definitely looking at expanding into Georgia. It's already happened, Florida, California. And then on the development side, I'd say probably in the ballpark of owning around 150 units around the city. So we're looking at really expanding so that the areas that are changing because of us, our influence, not outside influence. I
Absolutely.
think that's important.
And thank you
So,
for saying that, right?
yeah.
It's at the end of the day, it's going to be us that actually has to make the changes, But that's the purpose of this show. This is why we continue to highlight game changers like you, Brandon, because at the end of the day, like we out here, doing things. So it's just a matter of being able to find out what are the black people in our community. What are we doing? We got black people in every aspect of the sectors, like business, homeowners, restaurants. So we're trying to bring everyone to this space so that our people could continue to, like you say, continue to access the right sort of information, but also most importantly, educating our people, right?
So important.
To make sure that they continue to be part of this changing world that we live in. So we're getting close to the home run here, the home show. We want to be mindful of your time.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you it sounds like you're not going to retire anytime soon, right? But I appreciate you for dreaming big and shooting for long-term goals. So I will just say this. You went from just 2 people, you and your co-founder, now you're managing how many employees?
12.
12. So talk to us about that. What's that experience like for someone like you? How do you start your day? And, what do you think are the right ingredient of making sure you're managing people to make sure you achieve the company's goal?
Sure. I think the company works very, very well because Christian and I have very, very defined roles, right? And we're best friends and we get along very, very well. He's a CEO, I'm the CEO. So I'm very much involved in daily operations, right? Now, it's funny because COVID did pose a challenge because at the same time, people were in the office before, right? I can just peek over and look, why are you talking, right? Why aren't you working, right? Now you can't do that anymore, right? So now, again, it's been a challenge, or was a challenge, because how do we keep people engaged, right? So normally what will happen is I start my day probably around, I'm up around 7. I'm working 7:45, 8. I drive to the office every day. Even during COVID, I'm a routine type person. So I would still get up, get dressed, be at the office by 8:30, 9 o'clock, ready to start the day. So normally I'm planning my calendar when I first get there in the morning around 8:30. We have a team of loan officer assistants that a lot of times any client who starts the process will work with. I'm doing a morning meeting with them to go over, what's kind of happening with the pipeline, new clients coming in. A big part of the business is processing alone. And we have a very, very solid processing staff. They're actually bilingual, so Espanol. But we have a very, very strong processing staff because, again, at the end of the day, the mortgage process is paperwork. And in order to get the loan, the paperwork has to be very, very tight. So I do normally do a meeting at least 2 to 3 times a week with my processor to make sure that, one, everything is in and we're hitting our deadlines. In the purchase process, there are a lot of deadlines for inspection, for appraisal, for commitments. A lot of realtors that work with us know that we're very, very meticulous about making sure we hit those deadlines. So a good portion of my day is spent talking to my processor. I would say the afternoon, I'm normally making calls to either referral partners and relationships that I work with, right? Latter part of that, I normally spend doing my appointments. So I may look at my calendar. I may have appointments from probably 3:30 to 7:30 or 8 o'clock where I'm talking to first-time home buyers, people who have said, hey, you know what, I want to make this next jump. And they've gone ahead and done the application on their phone or online. And the call with me is to go through and make them comfortable with their payment, okay? Make them comfortable with their out-of-pocket, and if they have a realtor, match them with a realtor. I'm not gonna lie, normally I'm in the office till probably 11, 12, 1 in the morning. Some nights, that's the life of a business owner. And the reason why is because a lot of times during the day, I'm handling operations and interacting with the employee body to make sure that they are doing their job, to make sure they're taken care of. So a lot of my executive tasks I do latter parts of the night. So, answer your question.
You're a busy man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
So we like to sort of like close this out. So Brandon, if you could imagine the 11-year-old version of yourself sitting in front of you right now, giving what you know right now, what advice will you give him?
Wow. You didn't text me that question. I was a very
Yeah. Sorry, sometimes we just throw the curveball at you. Man.
Right. So I would tell him to. So this is a funny story, right? I mentioned that program called Fame, right? And when I got invited to it, I'm 11 years old. I'm thinking, okay, this is school in the summertime. I don't want to do that. I want to be out playing with my friends. I want to be hanging out. I want to be doing summer camp. Who wants to go to school in the summertime, right? I actually cried. My mom was like, Brandon, this is a great opportunity. I actually cried because I didn't want to go to school in the summertime. So I would tell young Brandon at 11, hey, don't give your mom a hard time about going to Fame, right? I'll also tell him that it's okay to want to work hard, right? And that sounds silly, but a lot of times I was always that kid where I'm not gonna say I beat to a different drum, but I always had like this super, super laser focus on whatever I wanted. And sometimes I felt kind of like I was missing out, right, on certain things. You know what I mean? But I wasn't, because had I not had that laser focus and I wasn't reared properly by my mom and the experience I had with my brother, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. You know what I mean? So yeah. I was that kid that listened, right? So you got the lecture. I still have the voice of my mom's voice on my shoulder now saying, hey, Brandon, don't do that, right? I can still hear her. So I was always the kid that listened, but at the same time, you're 11 years old. What do you know? You're 11 years old. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Toby, do you have anything you want to add?
No, so just running up, just once again, how can people reach you and your company?
Sure. So again, my office line, I'll give it out. It's 215-987-4125. That's the office. Instagram is Sir_Arison, ERRISON 303. And the company website is www.gomagnumloans.com. That 1-800 number, believe it or not, when it rings, it actually rings all of our mortgage associates. So if you get lucky, I'll pick up. If not, one of my team members pick up, and you can still get to me. Yep. Yep.
All right, so last question before we close out.
Sure.
Brandon, you're busy. You got a lot going on, but we also know that mental health is very important. So what do you do to sort of keep yourself sort of like, just make sure your mind is in the right place?
Sure. So I'm pretty sure everyone knows this. I played football when I was in college. So they implanted a chip back here telling me I have to go to the gym at least 3 or 4 days a week. I'm joking, but I'm big into weights. So I try to get to the gym probably, I say 3 or 4 days a week. I wish I can go more, So, some people like to run, some people read. I'm a gym guy.
Yep.
So you'll catch me at LA Fitness on City Avenue.
Okay, I might see you.
Yeah, you might see me there, right?
That's why I'm at.
I might need a spot, right?
Yeah. It depends what you lifting, bro. It also depends on the day. Don't ask me on Monday, man. I hate Monday.
City Fitness might catch me there.
Yeah.
And I during COVID, it's funny because you don't realize how much fun riding a bicycle is, right? So I did a mortgage for a guy who was the manager for Keswick Cycle in Westville. I think it's 40th and Chestnut, and bought a bike, and so you might catch me, girlfriend, cousin, whoever, riding our bikes, right? So I have I think it's a specialized, it's like a 58-inch frame. The guy told me, look, this is a steel frame bike. He's like, if you get hit by a truck, you won't survive, but your bike will. That's the most important thing. Because he told me. I'm joking, but I tell you, so you might catch me riding a bike. But to keep myself mentally sharp, I'll say those are things I do. I also, I say in the last couple of years too, I also watch a lot of like podcasts and interviews about other business owners, right? Just to see, what their mindset was. Because what happens is, as a business owner, and we've been successful, excuse me. But you're always trying to get to that next level, right? And sometimes like, well, you know what growing pains did these other people have that helped propel them to the next level, right? And Christian is my best friend. He's always he'll always challenge me and say, hey, look, at the next step, here's what you need to do to get to the next level. At the next step, you need to do this. So that motivates me too. But I try to, I'm self-motivated, but I'll try to also watch different podcasts and just hear about other stories, because a lot of times when you're a business owner, you think you're in it by yourself, but you're not. There's someone who's experienced the same trial, tribulation, the same thing you have. You just don't know it. Right. So yeah.
And you're talking about these podcasts, like any podcast that you want to recommend for some of us, in addition to that, books that you think people should sort of like really read, that who are interested in like really changing their life in a positive way, but also like buying home.
So one guy's name is, it's a YouTube channel. His name is Simon Sinek. He has this book. It's on Audible. It's called The Infinite Game, right? And what it talks about is, a lot of times as a business owner, people I want to be number one. I want to be in the best. I want to be the best, right? And they don't realize the game they're in, the business they're in, right? Now, you're in business so you can continue to stay in the business and do well. You're not in business so you can be number one. So he talks about that. Which I think is very, very important. Another book that I read, this is a while ago, is something called, it's called Strength Finder. And what it does is it helps you identify what your strengths are. It's so accurate that if you took the test 10 times, your top 5 strengths will come up in your top 6 every time. And what it does is, like, I'll give you an example. When I did it, my strengths were, it was competitor, activator, strategic, futuristic, was it competitor? Yeah, those are the strengths. But anyway, so I was like, I either need to be in the military or in sales. I'm joking, but those are the things that it said about my personality that actually stand out, right? Everyone has, I think there's 35 different strengths. Everyone is a mix of different ones, but at the same time, if you're trying to get to a career in an area where, your strength isn't going to work, then it doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it also helps you identify what you're not good at. So then you can make that weaker area a place you can improve. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, we're going to close out with this. Stephanie Johnson, this is a comment that she made. She said, the talk today has been very informative. She said, I appreciate hearing this information from someone who looks like me. She want to thank you. So with that, Brandon Baylor, correct?
Brandon Baylor, correct.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you for joining us on our talk show today. We definitely will reach out to you in the future. So this is part 1.
It's part 1, okay. All right.
So when I'm ready to buy my dream home, it'll be part 2, right?
Hey, I'm ready for you, man. I'm ready. All right. Yeah.
But thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we hope that you continue to really be this game changer for many of us. As you know, there's always like a little guy out there who's looking up to you. So not only like you in this game to help disrupt this sort of like really tight space where most of our people need to get in. So you're creating that pathway, but you also just like, you know, continue to be a role model for many of the young people like us. So thank you for doing the work that you do. Really appreciate you, man.
I appreciate having me on the show. You know, this is very informative for me as well. So I definitely appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to, you know, being invited back at a certain point. You know what I mean? So anytime you guys have questions or something like that, feel free to reach out. I definitely appreciate it. It's been a great opportunity.
And it's great to go from Philly to Atlanta.
Yeah.
That's a step up. But, you know, keep going up, brother. Just shoot for the stars. But thank you. We appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
All right. That's all.